Inside Out Talk aims to bring people together by discussing LGBT plus issues, people, community, influencers, history and politics. My name is Richie Litchfield, and in this podcast we'll look at LGBT plus role models and the part that they have had in shaping our community, influencing our people and also fighting prejudice. Nowadays, it's easy to class yourself as an LGBT plus role model, as being gay is seen to be fashionable. Do you agree? Do you think that some of these role models are using the LGBT plus community to springboard their careers, become influencers, and hone in on a niche market? Would they necessarily come out if being gay wasn't classed as acceptable? If so, how can these people be classed as a role model? Perhaps a role model has influenced your life and helped you. Perhaps you're a parent or a grandparent and have concerns about who is influencing your child, or you may have an LGBT plus icon that has been a major influence in your life. We want to hear from you. Our aim is to discuss some of these issues in our fortnightly podcast. Get in touch with us via our website, theinsideoutcampaign.org.uk, email us at talk@insideout.org.uk, or tweet us #InsideOut. Today, in the studio, I'm joined with four people who represent the LGBT plus community. We've got Stuart Carr, journalist and reporter, Ellie Martin, a performer, Alan Lathwell, a parent, and Christian Buddha, our producer. Without further ado, let's find out a little bit more about each of them, starting with you, Stuart.
Hi, I'm a reporter in Luton. I've been writing about LGBT issues in the town for about 5 years, both in terms of individuals who've had problems and the venues that we have in Luton and the struggle that people have had to keep those places open.
I'm Ellie Martin. I'm 18. I'm a performer. I'm also a teaching assistant and a barmaid. As a performer, I'm surrounded by a lot of people within the LGBT community, and they themselves have had like a massive impact on my life. Not just as friends, but they themselves. I don't know. You see how even today some of them do struggle with being gay, but it's all about the experience, I suppose, isn't it?
Hello, I'm Alan, 47, parent of 4. In my spare time I enjoy painting, and historically wise I enjoy Van Gogh's work.
Hi, I'm Christian. I'm a student in Luton. I study advertising and branding design. Some of my passions would be photography, music, and I'm the producer of this podcast and designer of the Inside Out campaign.
Fantastic. Well, that's all the formalities done. I have to say, when you talk about role models, the ultimate role model to me when I was growing up has got to be Madonna. When I was watching her on tour, she had a whole backing troupe of male gay dancers. And back then, I'm showing my age, the coming out was a lot more difficult, I think, in my opinion, to what it is now. So I was looking at those people thinking, wow, you're brave, that's what I want to be like. And just looking at Madonna as well, that's kind of what inspired me. So Ellie, define a role model to you.
To me, a role model is somebody that isn't afraid to be themselves, Like Madonna, she was always pushing boundaries and, expanding people's view, I think. And I think that's what a role model should be, They shouldn't just stick to the norm. They push those boundaries and they go that extra bit further. I think that's what makes people special, and I think that's what, people like to find in other people, like Madonna,
She was always very controversial, wasn't she, in what she did?
Yeah.
What about you, Stuart?
I think for me it's about finding a common link with that person. It might not be the most famous person, but it might be that celebrity or somebody with whom you feel a certain connection, And if that person is a bit weird and you're a bit weird as well, it's kind of like a celebration of weirdness, So I think it can be tribal as well, in the way that people choose, almost seek out their icons, and they try to find perhaps a more complete version of themselves in some way.
So when you were growing up, who were you looking to?
Well, beyond cartoons, I think in terms of what we're talking about, somebody like Annie Lennox I loved, because I love the androgyny. I love the fact that she went from being a cropped-haired, boyish type of woman to this Las Vegas showgirl complete with feathers. I think that was somebody who I really, really admired when I was growing up.
Lots of different faces, lots of imagery, different images. And...
Completely.
Alan?
I'd say someone a bit older and wiser that's done well for themselves with a good set of morals, and someone that you can aspire to do as well as they have.
For me, a role model is someone that inspires you, someone that you can look up to and find your identity within, someone that empowers you and makes you motivated to do what you want to do in your life. And for me, I would say Lady Gaga is one of the main role models in my life, because she always pushed the boundaries. She experimented with lots of music genres, and she was, her fashion is really eccentric as well.
Absolutely, yeah. But role models don't necessarily have to be linked to being a performer. You can get role models that aren't necessary on the stage. Give me an idea of some role models that aren't performers, that have influenced the LGBT plus community.
Barbie.
Really?
She might be inanimate, she might be a doll, but that's half of what we're looking for in an icon, is somebody who changes images all the time and reinvents themselves, and you can dress them up however you want them to.
Would she not be classed as a celebrity though?
Celebrity
it's
icon.
debatable.
I think so. Yeah.
I'd maybe even say a teacher, or someone that's like a leader or a minister of the church. And these days, people are a lot more open about their sexuality and stuff, and I think it's a good thing.
So why do you think that role models are important in society, Alan?
Well, you can have good role models and bad ones, obviously, but I'd like to think that people that set a good example and how to conduct themselves, and they're an influence to even footballers. You've got gay footballers coming out now, and they behave nicely, and the youngsters are looking up to those. Whereas you get some nasty ones that go down the pub and nightclubs and get into altercations, and they're a bad role model.
What about people like you mentioned earlier before we actually started the podcast, Alan Turing? Turing.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to pronounce, isn't it?
It is, yes. What about him? Would he be classed as a role model back in the day, or is he now a role model?
Well, the thing is, because he was chemically castrated, because he was basically charged with homosexuality, which was a crime at the time, but when he actually solved the Enigma code, he was like the unsung hero of the Second World War. He was a major part in bringing it to a close. Yeah, he did. But I think at that point, yes, he would have been a hero to a lot of people, and a role model. But in terms of being gay, once he was charged with that, you're talking 60 years ago, 60, 70 years ago.
I'll find that out for you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people probably would have, turned their back on him because of society at the time. I think it's only now we appreciate him, not necessarily for the fact that he was gay, but just because of what he did. You think The Imitation Game with Benedict Cumberbatch, the film they made about him, so obviously, we have to look back at those people that we kind of wronged in the past, for being gay or whatever it was, and actually learn to appreciate what they did for our society.
I think it's really interesting that you make that distinction between a hero and an icon, because I think a lot of people would see Alan Turing as a hero, someone who's martyred, but is he an icon? I mean, I tend to think of an icon as perhaps someone who you kind of admire from afar, but you don't perhaps know the ins and outs of what they're all about. You can perhaps admire them and transform them into whatever it is they represent for you, rather than a full...
Romanticise them.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's bringing it back to, I mean, you were saying earlier about, you know, have we got any kind of gay role models that aren't, you know, performers? But, I mean, you think a lot of our lives are consumed by the media, you know, film, television, theatre, music. And I think that's where a lot of people do find their icons. And I think to be an icon, I think you'd be very difficult to try and find an icon that's not within that kind of career. You know, I mean, you probably can, but you'd have to do like a pretty deep Google search, you know? I mean, I don't know, for me, personally, Barbra Streisand, she would be, I think within the gay community, she is the ultimate icon. She is her and Cher, you know.
Have you managed to get a ticket yet? Just digressing.
To Barbara or Cher?
Barbara.
No.
Oh,
if anyone out there wants to send me a ticket, feel free.
Yeah. So why Barbara?
Why Barbara is the question. She's just, I don't know. She's always embraced the gay community. I mean, her first actually paying audience was in a gay nightclub in Greenwich Village, and I think she always appreciates the fact that, you know, that is her fan base, and those are the people that have lifted her up from the beginning. She's that embodiment of a diva, not necessarily, you know, not that kind of like bitchy, fussy kind of diva, but, you know, a strong, powerful woman, you know. For me, that's where I find my influence from her anyway. You know, that strength that she has, and, you know, she's one of the only females to actually win like an Oscar for directing. You know, she's not just a singer. She's a performer. She's an actress. She's a director. She's a writer. You know, she's multifaceted, and I think that's another element to it. It's like she's not only this incredibly strong and powerful woman, she's also, you know, very talented.
Absolutely.
It's funny what you say about her starting her career in the gay nightclubs, because Bette Midler from the same era also started singing in gay bathhouses in the 1970s and so on. But for me, I tend to think of them as being an evolution from the original diva, which was Judy Garland.
Oh, of course.
and of course, the thing that's funny about Judy Garland is she was somebody who was seized upon by the gay community, and they just kind of made her their icon. She was obviously, at the time she was alive, at the time she was a celebrity, it was still illegal to be gay. But something about her strength, but also her nervousness, her kind of manic emotions seemed to
that
really
vulnerability
strike a chord.
So, over to you, Christian. Why do you think role models are important in society?
I think they're important because they make people want to do more. They make people see beyond what society rules, and they basically empower people. And I think if society was, if there were no role model in society, people would probably be the same, and it would be boring.
What about you, Alan? Why are sort of like LGBT role models important in society?
I think is it Laura McKee? She recently murdered by the new RA, but she was quite an upstanding person that was always campaigning for gay and lesbian rights and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's quite sad that she's been murdered. She was innocent reporter, bystander, and was yeah.
So as a parent, you obviously, you know, you've got two girls growing up. They're very young at the moment, but if, you know, one of them or both of them or said to you, Dad, I'm gay, what sort of positive role models could you think of that you'd want them actually looking up to?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer. But if I'm honest, I wouldn't say I was disappointed, because obviously they're not going to have grandchildren, but one thing that's been recently in the media and stuff is you've got heterosexual couples that can't have children, and they may be unfit parents, but they'll adopt. And I think if you've got a loving couple, like say a gay or lesbian couple, they've got a nice loving home to offer a child, and rather than being a home and stuff, they're being a nice loving environment, and there's a lot of people out there who want to bring up children, and I think there is like the homophobia side of the thing, where they think, oh, that's not right, they should be in a heterosexual sort of background. But I think as long as you've got two people that offer the love and support, you can turn out a much nicer child than a couple that are unfit parents.
So if they're looking at role models, who would they be? Who would you want them looking at that would be you see as being positive?
I'd maybe say like teachers or people that have worked hard and they've done their best, rather than a couple that are like drug addicts or drug dealers, if you know what I'm saying. There's good and bad people in all parts of society, but I like to take people as they kind of make my own mind up.
Okay, what about you, Stuart?
And what was the question, sorry?
We're talking about role models. So, why are sort of role models important within the sort of, or why are LGBT plus role models important in just today's mainstream society?
I think the number one word we're seeing at the moment in all parts of society is diversity, and it's important that whoever you are, whether you're LGBT or whether you're straight, that you have people that you can admire and identify with who are from the LGBT community, and that I think makes people more empathetic, and it makes them understand that actually beyond a difference of sexual orientation, LGBT people can do the same amazing, fantastic things as
and sometimes else. More fabulous.
Well, exactly.
What would life be without role models, and would it be carnage? There's the difference between role models and icons. Icons come into that, but what do you reckon life would be without them?
I don't know. That's a tricky question to answer. I think if you didn't have a role model, you wouldn't have something to aspire to. You wouldn't have, you might look at one, a role model you might have, and just maybe one element of that person. Say somebody's just a really kind person and you just want to aspire to be as kind as they are. I think it makes us better people when we have good role models and like something that we can look up to and then look forward to within our own lives. It's that power of influence is a very strong thing, and I think if we didn't have that, we'd just be static. We would just, I think we'd be very much self-involved actually, because if you didn't have a role model or somebody there to influence you, you wouldn't really have a reason or kind of a meaning to better yourself.
Okay, so I'm going to change the subject slightly now, or just steer it off course a little bit. We've talked a little bit about icons and celebrities and performers, and if we stick now with that side of the table, why do you think that some celebrities jump on the sort of like LGBT bandwagon? What do you reckon the danger of this is? Are these people fake? Do they actually care about us, or are they just trying to, jump on the pink pound, make some money, promote themselves, look rebellious and all that sort of stuff?
I definitely think it's happened, and that a particularly egregious example that comes to mind is Mel B being interviewed on Channel 4 recently about her bisexuality. Now, before this interview, I wasn't aware that Mel B was bisexual, but this interviewer sort of treated her as though she was some huge gay hero who'd gone through all sorts of ups and downs for the community, when in fact I don't really think that that's the case. And I think I'm latching perhaps onto this bisexuality claim, but it's easy for, I think, a performer or somebody in the public eye to come out with that and kind of use that as a sort of excuse to center themselves in the community and make themselves out to be a hero or more of a kind of activist for the LGBT community than perhaps they really were in the past.
See, you say that, and it, in some way, I agree with you, but what you've just said almost kind of embodies that whole kind of prejudice and judgment on the bisexual community.
Right.
Like, you know, I think it's actually not necessarily harder, but I think it's definitely a struggle for people to accept bisexuality, because you always have that question, oh, which do you prefer more, you know, like, is it 50-50, like, what percentage are you?
But why don't you think, apologies for that, why don't you think that she came out when the Spice Girls, came out the closet when the Spice Girls were in the top of their heyday? What do you think? Do you think she thought, oh, it's a bit too dangerous, it's a bit too risky, I don't want to alienate my...
No, do you know what?
audience?
If she is like legitimately bisexual, I mean, who are we to question her? If she is bisexual, you know.
But no one is actually questioning her. What I'm saying is, I think it was wrong in that example.
In that context.
In that context, for the interviewer to treat her as though she's somebody who's made great big sacrifices for the community, when I don't think she really has. I think she's perhaps revealed this bisexuality side of her quite late in the day, and maybe I'm being a bit cynical,
Just
but
the point of view, more fans.
exactly. That's how I feel about it.
I get what you're saying, but for me, it's almost like, well, if she's really bisexual, she should have come out years and years ago. But the thing is, like you said, when the Spice Girls were in their heyday, I mean, that was what, late 90s, early 2000s. Even then, you know, I mean, we think we've come a long way, even in the past 10, 15 years. For, I suppose, in 2000, for her to come out as bisexual, it would have been front page news on The Sun for, 6 weeks.
Will Young did it straight away, didn't he?
Well,
straight away. He didn't want any issues.
I still remember that headline, "Will, I'm gay," and I thought they were talking about Prince William. It was such a kind of obvious moot point when it turned out to be Will Young. So,
Richard, I don't know if you're saying right. Do you remember Duncan Lavelle? Chase Me. But apparently, he portrayed being a gay person, but it turned out that he was actually straight, and he was maybe jumping on the bandwagon back then as being gay, and to promote his...
Whatever happened to him? You just don't hear about him anymore.
It's a stroke.
Oh, did he really?
Yes.
We'll come back to that. But anyway, it's now time to summarise this. So, in general, how would you sum up the majority of role models / icons that we've discussed here around the table? Are they positive or are they negative?
well, everybody has negative aspects to them. I mean, you said your favourite icon was Madonna. You know, she's done some questionable things in her time. But overall, if we were talking about an image, her, Barbara Streisand, everybody else that we've talked about, I think we naturally look for good role models. We don't set out to find bad role models,
And as a parent, Alan, are you going to keep an eye on your girls just to see monitor who they're actually looking up to?
Well, maybe, but my youngest one, she's a real tomboy. She loves her football kits. If you get her a flowery dress or try and do her hair, she's her football kit. Yeah, I love it. But flowery dresses. My friend bought her.
So she's going to look up more to footballers, then, isn't she?
Yeah, she's looking forward to the Luton Town football parade on Sunday. But there you go. Yeah. If we're all the same, it'd be a very boring life.
I think it's kind of harder to categorise between positive and negative, because the big thing about icons is that they're whoever you want them to be. So usually they're very visual, usually, as you say, they're very fabulous, but the positive or negative, I think it's very much in the eye of the beholder.
Well, I'm definitely keeping an eye on my nephew and my niece and who they're sort of like looking up to. So what should parents, grandparents do if they've got concerns for their children? Christian, our producer, what helplines have we got? Where are we guiding people to?
Yeah, obviously they can also come on our website, Inside Out campaign, for help. And I also found other organizations that are helping people. I would mention Stonewall, the Terence Higgins Trust, or Switchboard. I think there are plenty of places that parents can look for help.
Fantastic. We'll stick them all on the website as well underneath the podcast. So that's all we've got time for in this episode. Thanks to our guests Stuart, Ellie, Alan and of course Christian for your input. Don't forget, if you've got any questions, you can reach out to us in the following ways via our website, theinsideoutcampaign.org.uk, email talk@insideout.org.uk, or of course you can tweet us at #InsideOut. In our next episode we'll be discussing tolerance and homophobia. Join the team and me in 2 weeks' time via our platform, The Inside Out Campaign. Thanks for listening.